Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Sjælland in Denmark, and we're returning to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good couple of times before. This will be review number 7 or 8 from these guys, if I remember correctly, and it's been about a year actually since my last review from this brewery, but I would say that I really enjoy the beers that these guys do, but they're just really difficult to find actually, and I'm not sure exactly why. But yeah, for this one then, we are going to head a little bit to the southwest of Copenhagen to Greve, and we're having a look at yet another beer from Alefarm Brewery. So this particular beer is called Mornings on Mission Bay. It comes in at 6.2% ABV, and it's an IPA. I'm not sure exactly what kind of IPA this one's going to be, because in the ingredients list, it lists barley malt, oat malt and wheat malt in it, which is usually a telltale sign of a New England IPA, but Mission Bay, if I remember correctly, is actually in San Diego in California, so that might be a sign that it's going to be a West Coaster. It could of course be some sort of hybrid, and that would be quite interesting. But I've had really nice beers from Alefarm Brewing before. I think I've had maybe 3 or 4 IPAs from them in the past, and they've always been pretty nice, so fingers crossed this is another good one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. 6.2% IPA, Mornings on Mission Bay. This beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021. And this was one of 2 beers that they did. I also got the double IPA, which you'll see me review in a few videos time. So yeah, you can look forward to that. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Alefarm Brewery before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list at some point fairly soon. Hopefully it's not another year until I get a hold of some beers from these guys again. I would love to know where you can actually find these in central Copenhagen, because they seem to be a little bit like gold dust at the moment. But anyway, we will try and add more to that when we can. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very, very regularly because I live very close to Denmark. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely, hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Alefarm Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So, Alefarm is the brainchild of Andreas Skøyd Larsen and Kasper Tiedemann, and the company was founded back in 2015. So, Andreas had been a home brewer for a while, but he'd worked for a period of time as a librarian as well, from what I understand. But Kasper has a very extensive background in the IT sector, and he's involved in several different companies and organisations, one of which is his own consultancy firm. But originally, they based the brewery on a farm to the north of Copenhagen, hence the name Alefarm, but they soon moved the business to Køge, which is to the southwest of the city, and actually further south of Greve, if I remember correctly. But for a long time they were brewing with a very small 200 litre brew kit, and this was intended as a sort of pilot and transition kit. But then a bit later on in 2018 they opened up a new 20 hectolitre brewery in Greve, which has a canning line, and their beers have been starting to export abroad. And maybe that's the reason why I've struggled to get a hold of some of the Alefarm stuff. Maybe they're sending a hell of a lot of it abroad rather than keeping it in Denmark. So I don't know about that. As I say, if you're watching from Greve or from Copenhagen, let me know where I can get a hold of these beers. But at this point in 2018, Andreas Skøyd Larsen left the company and went into brewing cider. For a period of time, they had Mark Walewski, who was originally from Beavertown in London. He was brewing for them, but he's now brewing back in London with Mikkeller. But the brewery is now run on a daily basis by Kasper, along with his wife Britt, and they've been very prolific over the last little while actually. As of March 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 300 different kinds of beer, and they are pretty well respected actually, but like I say, they just seem to be a little bit hard to get hold of, unfortunately. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Alefarm Brewery for the moment. I've had some really nice IPAs from these guys over the years. Originally they were brewing sour beers, and the very first beer that I tried from these guys was actually a sour ale, and I remember I think Andreas actually tried to send me a replacement, because the one that I got, he said, was slightly oxidised. He kept trying to send me a new bottle of this beer, but unfortunately someone in the Danish post kept stealing it, and so he kept getting his insurance money back, and I think eventually he kind of gave up. He tried to send it about 2 or 3 times and the beer kept going missing. So yeah, someone in the Danish postal service was stealing this beer that was being sent. So yeah, that's a funny encounter I had with Alefarm maybe back in about, you know, I think that must have been about 2017, come to think of it. That's quite a few years ago now. But yeah, these guys have been out, you know, getting up there a little bit more over the last little while, and I've enjoyed the beers. They do a lot of New England hazy IPAs. They do a few West Coasters as well, and there's a few Imperial Stouts and Imperial Porters and things in there too. But yeah, definitely a brewery that's worth checking out. Danish beer, as I've told you in many a review now, is of a very, very high standard, and there's some really great breweries on Sjælland and in other places in Denmark as well. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Alefarm for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this before we open it up. Some of the artwork that you'll find from Alefarm Brewing is kind of cartoony and more graphical, but some of them have these really nice photographs on the can as well there. But there you can see on the back of the can there is the Alefarm symbol, and this one, as I said to you at the start of the video, is a 6.2% IPA. So yeah, it's got Chinook, BBC Mosaic BBC in it, and also Simcoe. So I think this one should be really nice. I'm guessing that the Chinook will have been added probably both as a bittering hop and as an aroma hop. Lovely big kind of grapefruity notes out of it, quite a big piney and resinous hop. Mosaic, of course, as we know, is a lovely kind of light tangerine note, and then Simcoe is going to give you a lot of kind of soft passion fruit and things like that, especially when there's oats and wheat in the malt base here. But like I said earlier, I'm just very, very curious to see whether this one is going to be more of a West Coaster because of the name, Mission Bay, San Diego, California, or whether it's going to be more New England because of the oats and the wheat in the malt base. Some beers, of course, from the West Coast will have a little bit of oat and wheat in them. But yeah, I'm just really not sure what to expect from this one. But yeah, 440ml can this. Like I said to you earlier, it was released as part of the Lokal och Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021. Usually that's mainly Swedish beers, but we actually got quite a lot of Danish ones through this month in March. I'm not sure exactly why, but this was one of 2 beers that Alefarm Brewing released, and I'm sure we'll you know, I did get the other one, so you will see that reviewed in a few videos time. But yeah, I think I paid about 55 Swedish kroners for this one, which is roughly €5.50, about £5 sterling, and maybe about $6.25 American. So that gives you a rough idea of the price of this beer. So yeah, cheaper. We actually got it cheaper here in Sweden than it would be in Denmark. I think you'd probably pay about 50 Danish kroners for this, or 45 at least. But yeah, pretty cool. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Just a plain silver top on the can, of course. But yeah, let's go for it. A little bit of bubbles on the opening there, but nothing too major. It did actually feel like the can was pretty solid. When I picked it up earlier, I thought there was a fairly solid thing here. But yeah, let's see how this one turns out. Is it going to be a New England, or is it going to be a West Coast, or will it be a little bit of a hybrid? We'll need to see. But yeah, certainly looks like a nice beer. Quite a bit of head coming out of this one, so we'll leave it at that for the moment, and I think I've got about 3/4 of it in the glass, yeah, roughly about 3/4. But yeah, just check that my OCD is happy, and I think it is. So yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured a lovely, very rich kind of yellow colour. You can see the head on the beer just before it fades away. It was near enough 2 fingers, actually, 1.5 fingers at the moment. It's getting bumpier now, but it was actually quite frothy when it was poured. And I think it's, you know, pure white actually. I wouldn't describe that as creamy or ivory or anything like that. Definitely a pure white head. But if we shine the light through this beer, It comes across as a very, very kind of bright yellow colour, kind of like a mango juice if you like. When it comes to these sort of hazy looking IPAs, I always enjoy comparing them to the different fruit juices because that's just what they remind me of. So yeah, I think this one is just a really bright yellow. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, but overall it looks pretty nice. But certainly in terms of appearance, this one would appear to be New England Hazy IPA, whatever you want to call it, and for a 6.2%, it does actually have a fairly impressive level of haze. I have seen ones that are soupier and gloopier, but this one does have a good little bit of opacity to it. But if I stick my fingers behind the glass there, it does seem pretty solid actually. So yeah, I like how that appears, but definitely in terms of appearance, more of a New England IPA, but I'm sure we'll be able to tell for definite when we smell and have a taste of it. Itchy arm. There we go. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer if you think about it being an IPA. So yeah. I have to say it does smell very, very nice. These Alefarm beers, from what I remember, they were always very, very smooth and just very drinkable, but they had quite a nice solid flavour to them always, I remember. Just a bit of a shame that I can't get them a little bit more easily, to be honest with you. Probably could order them from the web shop, but you know, I don't really like ordering beers just from one brewery. I'd rather go to one of the local shops, support them as well, and get a bunch of different things to review for you here on the channel. That's it. So if someone knows in Copenhagen where the Alefarm beers are stocked, that would be great. I know there's a supermarket, I think, in the south of Copenhagen, but that's way out the way. But yeah, let me know where in central Copenhagen I can find some Alefarm stuff. That would be great. But yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, I think with this beer, I would say the malty side of things, there's a few different directions you can take a New England IPA. It can be yeasty and more it can be a little bit yeasty and farmhousey. It can be sort of rye and grainy, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, you know, barley malt leaning and bready, or it can be quite sweet and you know, kind of brown sugary leaning. You can get these 6 directions to take a New England IPA. But for me, this one's quite interesting. There's a good bit of oak coming out of it, I think. And if you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you get a nice wheaty character. But at the same time, I think the yeast is playing a good bit of a role in this one as well. You can smell just one or two little sort of yeasty, fluffy elements out of the beer actually. But yeah, if you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, it's definitely got a more, it's definitely got a little bit more wheaty bitiness to it. Some nice oats in there, like I say. Then you've got the soft kind of yeasty quality in this one, so it's actually quite well balanced. You can smell a bit of a soft white bready character in there too. So you're getting bready malts, you're getting oaty characters, you're getting a little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness, and you're also getting, you know, you're also getting a little bit of yeastiness. I mean, this is a really, really interesting beer, I have to say, in terms of its malty side of things. I'd forgotten how kind of soft and kind of juicy and things these Alefarm beers always came across as being, but this one, the more that I smell of it, the more I think that it comes across as quite yeasty in a lot of ways. So yeah, it gets more and more of that kind of farmhousey sort of thing. When the brewery's called Alefarm, I guess that's quite fitting, to be honest. So yeah. It smells a little bit in some ways like some of the Apex Brewing beers that I've had, so I wonder if it's like a WLP London Fog that they're using in this. I'd be quite curious to know that. It has got a few similarities, to be honest with you, there. So yeah, that's another interesting point to make about this beer, I would say. So yeah, malty side of things, yeasty side of things, I think it's quite interesting. There's a little touch of a Werther's Original sort of butter candy note to it, but not a lot. This beer's all about the bread, the oat, a little bit of the wheaty bitiness and the yeast. But I'd say the more that I smell of this one, it's the bread, the sort of bready notes from the barley malt, pardon me, and a little bit of the yeasty character that starts to come out of this beer. So yeah, that covers the malty side of it, I think. Let's look at the hops then before we taste it. So on the hoppy side of the aroma, you get a teeny little bit of earthiness out of this one. That'll be from the Mosaic, but I would say that that's quite minimal. There is a wee bit of a there is a nice little bit of floral aromaticity to the beer. I wouldn't say it's overly pungent. It's quite a smooth floral aromaticity. Then there's a little bit of a sort of lighter grassy kind of thing in there. There's a little sort of grassy kind of thing in there as well, which I which I can really appreciate. So yeah, I do like how the green component in this beer goes together, and it's sort of the softness of the green component I think matches well with the sort of yeasty and malty backbone of this beer. So again, this is what I remember Alefarm beers being like, very soft and very drinkable. On the fruity side of things, let's look at this. Yeah, it's quite you know, for me, it's interesting because you do get quite a bit of that tangerine orange from the mosaic. That's definitely in there. You can smell that right on the front of the nose. But there's also a little bit of a kind of apricot-y kind of note in there, which I would think is maybe coming from the yeast. Simcoe's always going to give you a very soft passion fruity and almost slightly mango-y note in there, and you definitely get that out of this beer as well, which is it's really interesting. So yeah, soft tropical fruits and definitely a little bit of a kind of more juicy tangerine note. So I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a strong passion fruit. The other thing that surprised me about this beer is that Chinook really has a very powerful grapefruit backbone to it. You're not getting a lot of that in this one. So that's a really interesting point to make here. I'm curious to see. I think this beer might be quite different in the way the flavours come out when we actually taste it, to be honest with you. So we'll see how that goes though. I think the malty side of things will be, you know, will be what we expect, but I've got a feeling that the fruity side of things might be quite different. But remember, when it comes to adding hops into the beer, the level of bitterness and stuff you get out of the beers depends on when during the wort boil you add it. If you add them earlier on, you've got more bitterness, but over the course of boiling your wort, you've got a trade-off between bitterness in favour of more you've got a trade-off between bitterness in favour of a more kind of juicy, fruity approach. So bear that in mind. But yeah, the overall aroma of this beer is quite interesting. So yeah, definitely a wee bit of an apricot-y, mango-y type note to the beer, but the more that I smell the fruits, it leans towards that kind of tangerine-y, orangey side of thing. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. I'm curious about this beer. So this one is the Mornings on Mission Bay, an IPA at 6.2% ABV. It seems to be a New England, but we'll see from the taste. Hopped with Chinook, Mosaic, and Simcoe from Alefarm Brewing in Greve to the southwest of Copenhagen. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, tell you straight away, this one has a wee bit more zip to it than you think it's gonna when you take it in. But that's another nice beer from these guys, absolutely. Makes me even sadder that I can't get a hold of these easily, to be honest with you. Sad times. It's got a wee bit more carbonation to it as well. The carbonation just gives it a wee bit of a zip. But yeah, that's how it goes. But again, it kind of retains that sort of, you know, that sort of presumption, that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? My brain's not working. That sort of preconception, that's it. This beer sort of fits the preconception that I had about what it was going to be before I went into it, just in terms of a general Alefarm beer, not whether it's New England or West Coast, because it's a little bit more kind of New Englandy. But yeah, it's like one of these, again, it's in terms of Alefarm, as I said, they've always done very soft and very kind of drinkable beers, and it fits into that category pretty much spot on. So it's another typical Alefarm beer in my experience. But I do like how this goes together. I always enjoyed having an IPA from these guys every so often, and this one is another nice example. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour a little bit then. First impression of it is though it's got a little bit more carbonation, but you could see how hard the can was when we opened it up. It's got a little bit of zip to it, and it's again very soft and kind of typical of Alefarm. So yeah. Yeah. But it's in quite good condition, I have to say. I do like how it goes together. I think you will need to wax though. Don't hold on to this can too long if you're buying it in Sweden, because it might just go bang. It was pretty solid when we got a hold of that before. But yeah, where to start with this one then? So straight away across the middle of your palate, you've got a nice soft white bready character there. That's your barley malt. You can feel that forming the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you do start to get a little bit of the oaty character out of the beer. It just gives the beer a little smoothness, and it's almost as if you go right down that middle line of your tongue. You can just feel the oaty the kind of oatiness sitting there, and it gives you that sort of powdery character that you can get from oats when they've been sitting in the beer for a little while actually. So you get a wee bit of that slightly powdery and almost slightly sweet oaty character out of the beer. But yeah, that middle third of your palate is very, very straight shooting, and I do like that about it. You will notice that in the centre of your palate there's almost like a little circle there, and then you get a little bit of a sort of you do get a wee touch of that Werther's Original butter candy sort of thing coming out of it. That'll be the alcohol flavours, of course, just giving you that in the centre of the palate. But I would say that that's quite minimal compared to the other things that are going on in the malty, yeasty section of the beer. But it does become a little bit more noticeable the further you go into the aftertaste. I'd definitely say that about it for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is quite similar to the other Alefarm beers I've had before, and I like how they do their beers, so that's probably why I like this one as well. Is it the best beer I've had from Alefarm? It's difficult to say because I can't really remember the other ones that I've had before. But is it another solid effort? Absolutely. I wouldn't hesitate to say that. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of the tongue fairly well. So if we go back to the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel that there's a slightly thicker breadiness kind of builds up there. You get a wee bit of a grainy bread crusty kind of thing. And then on the back third of your palate, you get a little bit more of kind of wheaty, bitey element out of it. So I do like that about this one, definitely. So yeah, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that about this beer for sure. I like how all of that sort of pieces together in this one. It's really quite nicely done from that perspective. So yeah, and the more that I focus on the back third of the palate, you do get a little bit more of that wheaty bitiness pushing its way out of the beer a little bit later on, and you can feel more of that kind of slightly thicker yeasty quality just kind of rising up a wee bit on the back of your palate. So the thickness at the back third of your tongue, the thickness from back to front of your tongue, the thickness of the beer goes a little bit down like this until you reach that border region. Then in the middle third of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of dense, if that makes sense, and then when you reach the front third of your palate, you've got those kind of wetter fruity qualities, but we'll come to that a little bit later on. So yeah, I think you get a wee bit more. It's quite a bready, barley malt and kind of yeasty leaning IPA, this one, I would say, and I think in flavour profile wise, it's definitely a New England. I don't think there's much I don't think there's too much doubt in my mind about that. It is more of a New England. There are, you probably could argue that there's wee elements of West Coast in here, but nah, it's more of a New England sort of thing. But in fairness, Alefarm, you could argue that some of the malty sweetness you get out of this beer makes it a little bit more West Coasty, but it's low bitterness, it's quite yeasty and things like that. It's not quite as creamy as you'll get from some of the New Englands, right enough. But yeah, I'm more tempted to say this is a bit more of it definitely strikes me as being a bit more kind of New Englandy than a big oily sort of West Coasty IPA. I think I would stick with that. But it is very reminiscent of the other IPAs I've had from this brewery before. But yeah, I think we've covered the kind of the sort of malty, yeasty side of this beer fairly extensively. So let's have a look at the hoppy side of it. So yeah, the green component is quite nice in this one. When you first take the beer in, it does have a wee bit of bite to it, but then the whole beer, as I say, just kind of smoothens out in oil and sort of oils up a little bit, but we'll come to the mouthfeel later. But on the back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of earthiness there. As we move further forward, we get a little bit, you do get a wee bit of you get a good floral quality kind of building out of this one, but you don't get the kind of piney resiny notes that you might expect from the Chinook. So that to me would indicate that Chinook has probably been added as an aroma hop actually, rather than a bittering hop. Maybe they've got just a wee bit of Columbus or Tomahawk or even Zeus, or even a CTZ blend or something like that as the bittering hop in this one. But it's not an overly bitter beer, but you can feel it gets a nice bright floral aromatic note as you move further and further forward towards the front kind of corners of the tongue, if you like. But when you go round the front curve of the palate, it's got a nice little bit of a lighter grassiness in there. There's a wee touch of zestiness too, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, it goes together very, very nicely. So awesome. Yeah, the green component of this beer, I think is quite nice. It's got a nice bright floral note to it. It's got a wee bit of zestiness to the grassiness, and that sort of builds a good bridge with the slightly wheaty bitiness that builds in this beer too. But I have to say, I do like how this one goes together. This one strikes me as being a little bit more almost, could we say, zingy than some of the other Alefarm ones I've had before. So yeah, interesting, definitely. But yeah, on the front third of your palate then, as I always say, that front third of your palate is where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. If you go to that border region between the middle and front third of your palate, again, you get a slightly thicker bready build up there. There's a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty grainy quality. Then underneath the kind of front, that front third of your palate, you've got a soft sort of barley malt type thing. It's like a kind of soft white bready character that you get out of this one. Basically, that's the basis of your fruits, but you can feel that there's just something telling me that a little bit of the fruity character in this beer is coming from the yeast as well as the hops that are in here. So it's quite an interesting one, this. At the back of that front third of your palate then, you do get a wee bit of a more kind of concentrated citrusy kind of note. But when you go further forward from that, there is a wee bit of passion fruit in there. And as you move, the passion fruit kind of becomes a more soft apricot-y type note. I wouldn't go as far as saying like papaya or anything like that, but definitely a wee bit more of a kind of apricot-y softness there. And then on the front half of that front third of your tongue, you get a little touch of a kind of, well, not a little touch, you get a good little bit of an oily, juicy tangerine note from the mosaic. I'm just wondering where the Chinook is in this beer, because Chinook always usually gives you a bit of a kind of more powerful grapefruity note there. So yeah, maybe there's a few things about Chinook that I don't quite understand. Next month though, OO Brewing are bringing out a 100 Chinook beer, so that I think will be an interesting experience to have that one. So, you know, maybe it would have been better to have this beer a month later after I'd had the OO one, because I really, from what my kind of preconception of Chinook is, big, piney, resinous, bitter thing, good bit of powerful grapefruit in it, I just don't get that in this beer, and that's what surprises me about this one. So yeah, I guess I've got a little bit to learn about Chinook as an aroma hop, because I really only get the Simcoe and the mosaic in this one, to be honest with you. There's a wee touch of zestiness on the front kind of tip of the tongue, but yeah, I do like how this whole thing goes together in that sense. It's a lovely kind of easy drinking New England IPA, I would say. There are, you know, some of the oiliness and fruitiness that the beer has is a little bit reminiscent of the West Coast. It's got a wee touch of sweetness to it as well, which again is reminiscent of West Coast, but I think it's really more of a New Englander, this. I think I would stick with that premise, to be honest with you. But I like it. I do like this, and I've enjoyed the IPAs I've had from Alefarm before, so I'm not surprised. It strikes me as being a little bit more kind of zingy, almost, as I said, though. But in terms of the mouthfeel, to round off this review then, what can we say there? You know, it's a fairly kind of middle-of-the-road beer, this one, absolutely. Carbonation, I think, is a little bit higher on this one. You could see that the can was absolutely solid when we opened it up, so maybe it's been sitting for, you know, a couple of weeks before it's come into Systembolaget, but you wouldn't really notice that with this beer. It actually does strike me as being fairly kind of fresh, actually. So not sure about that, but yeah, it's got a bit of slickness to it. It's got a wee touch of oiliness, which I think suits the fruity sort of things. So yeah, nice kind of smooth, oily, fruity kind of thing. I like how that goes together in this beer. So yeah, the mouthfeel of this one I think is quite nice, just quite slick. In terms of hoppy bitterness, it's definitely not a bitter beer. I think it's a fairly standard kind of 30 IBUs or something like that. The malty, yeasty side of things, as I said, is quite smooth. There's a little bit of sweetness in there, and yeah, I really like how that whole thing goes together in this beer. Absolutely. You know, fruity side of things, nice and juicy, a little bit kind of oily and slick, but yeah, this beer gets a thumbs up from me. As I said earlier, is it the most exciting beer that I've had from Alefarm? I couldn't tell you, but it does strike me as being quite similar to the ones that I've had before, and I like the way that Alefarm do their IPAs, but definitely more of a New Englander, this, I would say. Quite a slick New Englander, though, I would add. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Mornings on Mission Bay, 6.2% IPA from Alefarm Brewing in Greve, to the southwest of Copenhagen, over in Denmark. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are. from Alefarm. We will no doubt return to these guys again soon, because I do have one more of their beers. Let me know where I can find these beers, because I would love to review things from Alefarm a little bit more regularly. But yeah, it's been awesome to return to them. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Check out all my social media, check out Alefarm, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and you'll see a few more Danish reviews coming up very soon.